Finally get to sit down and relax and watch a nice board game video. Tokyo, what are you thinking? Either a tailored trick-taking table or a cardboard east?
Harry, I'll take either one. Either one sounds good to me today.
Alright, I'll just get this fired up. Wait, what's this warning here?
We're just trying to watch a video.
Breaking
What the?
news. We're sorry to interrupt your regularly scheduled programming, but we have breaking news. There's been a confirmed Godzilla sighting in your area. We do not want to underestimate the seriousness of this situation and the consequences it can have. According to the most recent reports, this is not a warning of potential disaster. It's not that you maybe will be affected, you positively will be. Godzilla is not only going to be simply in your area, Godzilla will be inside your home. According to most recent reports, thanks to Restoration Games, you will be getting Godzilla on your board game table sooner than you expected. It's been a long time since we've had news of this magnitude. Sweating at the very thought of it. What could this mean for the future of Godzilla's representation in board gaming? Well, that's an answer only the future will hold. Hi, and welcome to Board Game Animal. My name is Justin. Last year, we covered the history of Godzilla board games and did it rather in depth. And I also spoke about specifically some ideas of what good Godzilla games there could be, because up till somewhat recently, there haven't really been many good showings. In the months that followed those videos that we made, essentially two of the games that I said should exist ended up happening, one being Godzilla's addition to Cthulhu Death May Die, and the other being the announcement of Battle Monsters from Restoration Games. So in the pattern of hopefully manifesting more Godzilla in board games, I wanted to take one of those announced games, Battle Monsters, which is Restoration's upcoming remake of Battle Masters, and make a little bit of a wish list for it. So far, what's been announced is specifically the legendary versions of Godzilla, King Kong, King Ghidorah, and Mechagodzilla, meaning specifically the designs or versions that have been in the most recent American films. And for context, while Restoration Games is indeed a friend of Board Game Animal, all of what we're talking about today is just some ideas that I had. Right now, I don't know any more than you do about Battle Monsters, and I don't even know if it'll have the scope rights-wise to include classic Toho monsters, which is basically what this list is. But if I know anything about our pals at Restoration, they know how to make killer expansions. So for this game, why would it be any different? Because I already imagined with the legendary movies alone, we'll see Mothra and Rodan down the line, so what about even further than that? So if the scope of what they have access to eventually does grow past the legendary films, here's my wish list for the top 10 inclusions I'd like to see in Battle Monsters. Since this is all a bit of conjecture off the top of my head, I won't waste too much of your time going into crazy amounts of detail, especially for the ones lower here on the list. Number 10 is Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla is a highlight of the Heisei era, who had very unique abilities, and in the movie itself, it showed him affecting the environment with the things he could do. He made crystal towers, capture other monsters, he could fly. There was a lot of variability, and he has such an iconic look, it would make a lot of sense. For number 9, I'm going to say classic King Kong in Godzilla, and not merely a skin swap. I'd like to see the kind of humorous-looking versions of 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla, because to be honest, their skill set in this movie was a little different than the modern American ones. You could give King Kong his lightning. No matter how little sense that makes, it'd be a lot of fun in the game. Number 8 is Mothra larvae, specifically 2 of them. Like I said earlier, it's inevitable that Mothra herself is going to appear in the game at some point. But I'd specifically like to see the 2 Mothra larvae from 1964's Mothra vs. Godzilla, because, spoiler alert for a over 60-year-old movie, at the end, the 2 larvae defeat Godzilla by themselves. And I think it would be kind of fun to be playing as 2 monsters in sync with each other, so you can do a little bit of tactics, you have the web shooting, yeah, it'd be pretty fun. Number 7, I'm saying classic King Ghidorah, specifically the one from 1968's Destroy All Monsters. The reason I'm saying this one is this movie infamously had him fighting against 10 other monsters, or kind of 10, there's a lot of lore there. But in this movie, it showed what a threat King Ghidorah was, that it would take essentially an army of kaiju to defeat one. And again, while making this, I don't know too many details about how this game is going to play, but introducing a one versus many element where one person got to play as the classic King Ghidorah against everyone else's different monsters could be a pretty interesting element. We can always use more good one versus all games. Next up, we have Gigan. Now, Gigan to fans is infamous, iconic. He's a character, all right. But I think Gigan has a very interesting ability set and is very eye-catching to non-fans. So even if you don't know about Gigan's history and his antics, he would be a very interesting choice that people would look at and say, I'd like to play as the giant cyborg bird Cyclops with a chainsaw on his chest and hooks for hands. Number 5 is a little bit of a cheat because obviously Godzilla's already in the game, and additionally, people may not want a ton of different versions of Godzilla. They rather see different monsters. But I would especially love to see Shin Godzilla represented in the game. A lot of folks online have debated for a while about which Godzilla would win, Shin Godzilla or the legendary Godzilla. So why not put it in a game where you could actually play it out? And maybe something to do with Shin Godzilla's different forms. That would be pretty interesting to see adapted with the miniatures. Fans would absolutely go nuts over that. But you could also consider this slot a little bit of a cheat. That in place of this, you could put any of the Godzillas in there. You could do Godzilla -1. You could do Godzilla 1954. Heck, you could even do Marvel Godzilla or whatever you have the rights to do. Number 4 is Biolante. Biolante was the first rival Godzilla fought in his second era, and is a bit of a legend. Giant plant creature, tons of tentacles, much bigger than Godzilla, very formidable foe, made partially out of Godzilla's DNA. Something like this being massive and sprawling on the board would be one of those eye-catching things that someone would walk past and say, what on earth are you playing? Just such a massive creature that has a lot of tentacles, has a poison spray. There's a lot of things going on here that I think would make Biolante very unique amongst the other kaiju. Number 3, Hetera the Smog Monster. 1971's Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster was a very interesting film, and it introduced a very unusual creature, just a pollution-loving pile of sludge, Hetera. Again, I think monsters with different forms could be very interesting in this game, but especially one like Hetera that has range, he has sludge, he has poison. These are things that I'm sure you could put implementation in a combat game, as well as having the UFO form, which is really just pretty rad, and being able to fly around the board. I don't know. I've always been a massive fan of Hetera's design. I think, again, it would just be an eye-catching thing on this board that I'd love to see interact with the other monsters. Number 2 is my biggest cheat. Number 2 is not a monster or something from the Godzilla lore that I want to see included in this game. I want to see separately sold unmatched decks of cards with a health dial for the monsters, at least Godzilla and Kong from Battle Monsters. I know it's a massive cheat, but hear me out. Like, I'm pretty sure I said in my original History of Godzilla Games video, who cares about scale? Call Godzilla a large figure like the T-Rex and call it a day. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we're in a bit of a renaissance right now when it comes to Godzilla being represented in other media. Lately, between Godzilla's appearances in Marvel, DC, Power Rangers, Minecraft, soap, the list goes on and on. And how fun would it be to play Godzilla against Sherlock Holmes? That would be amazing. Similar to how the bosses in the upcoming Unmatched Adventures set are also going to get decks to make them playable, I don't think it's completely unheard of that we could have a little side product of a deck with a health dial to include these massive Godzilla or King Kong miniatures in Unmatched. One way or another, we could make it work. And number 1 is the most ridiculous pipe dream of mine, and that would be including Jet Jaguar. If you've watched my other videos, or know that I'm an absolute massive fan of Jet Jaguar from 1973's Godzilla vs. Megalon. Now listen, pipe dream, maybe, but then again, I didn't expect to see him fighting alongside Spider-Man in 2025 either, now did I? I would approach him in this game would be to lean into the size-changing abilities, much like the early 2000s video games, where Jet Jaguar could grow smaller or grow much larger than the other monsters. The set could come with 3 differently sized miniatures, and the different sizes alter things like strength, speed, range, durability, etc., etc. This looks so cool, and he's so ridiculous. Any Jet Jaguar fans out there, leave it in the comments below. I'd like to say that I represent the Jet Jaguar fandom in the board game hobby, and I will keep fighting until I see a little gray plastic figure of him in some box somewhere. And that's it! But here's the thing, the Kickstarter for Battle Monsters starts today. Go support it now. Support the game. Hopefully we will get more expansions. And in the meantime, doing it now will get you a free collector's coin. The link to the Kickstarter is down in the description below. And if you want to see more Godzilla-related content from us, please let us know in the comments below. There likely will be more anyway, and you can be sure that we will be covering Battle Monsters as soon as we get the opportunity to, and we will be covering it in a lot of detail. But yeah, if you want to talk about any of our suggestions or ideas, or tell me some of your own things that you'd like to see in the game, please put it in the comments. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing, and remember to always play board games like an animal, which includes all kaiju.